Hi, I'm Elaine. Welcome to my vegan lifestyle. We're in the kitchen, so that means I'm sharing a recipe with you today. And what's here on the board today are ingredients to make my egg seasoning for tofu scramble or tofu eggs. That's usually a favorite of folks when they go to a restaurant, but some people say they don't know how to make it at home. I am not doing a copycat on any restaurant that you may have visited. This is a recipe that I've been doing for several years. And I raised my son vegan, but he has chosen to go on a different path, and that's okay. But he still loves mom's tofu eggs. So let's get started. On the counter here, I have a 1/4 cup of onion powder. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour that into my bowl. I then have 2 tablespoons of dried parsley. So we're gonna put that in there as well. And then here on my little dinner size plate, or salad plate I should say, I have thyme, mahora, garlic powder, celery salt, and turmeric. I will definitely place the measurements below, but here I have a 1/2 teaspoon of thyme, and you could do oregano if you wanted to instead, but I typically do thyme. Sometimes I put a 1/4 teaspoon of oregano, a 1/4 teaspoon of thyme. You can decide what works for you. This is a 1/2 teaspoon of mahora. I have 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, adding in there. We have our celery salt, and I believe the celery salt is 2 teaspoons, but I will clarify below in my description. And then we have a tablespoon of turmeric. And that is not only going to give it a nice flavor, but also that sort of egg-like color. And then once we have all of our ingredients in our bowl, we're just going to mix all of it together. And I'm typically going to select the organic spices and seasonings from the store. Organic, I think, although nothing is perfect, organic is always better to try to go that route if you can and when you can. There, so I don't know if you can see that, but that's pretty much blended. And what you can do, I typically am going to store this in one of my little seasoning containers that I've purchased. I don't know where I've purchased these. I've had these for ages. So these are great though. You can kind of come up with your own seasonings, like I do a ranch dressing, and I will keep like the base in a container, and then that way when I want to make it, it's already ready to go. And same with this recipe. I usually make more than enough ahead of time, so that way I can store it. And then when it comes time to making the scramble, there's no delay. And then for the scramble, it's to your own discretion how much you'd like to place on there. I typically do 2 tablespoons, and this is actually 1 14-ounce container of tofu. If you've not worked with tofu before, or it's not a staple in your diet and you're not exactly sure how to work with it, what you want to do is make sure that you squeeze as much water as you can out of it prior to using it. And that way it will help it cook a little bit more quickly and not be so damp or wet when you're cooking with it. So you typically can squeeze the water out with cheesecloth, or like a few layers of paper towel as well. I'm gonna go ahead and you just want to make sure that the tofu is coated. I didn't use that full teaspoon if you noticed. Now, 2 ingredients you did not hear me mention were salt and pepper. Definitely to give it that more egg-like flavor. And there are other salts that you can use, like I believe Nala black salt, which has like sort of like an egg fragrance to it. And so when one eats it, people tend to think of eggs. You can definitely try playing around with that and adding that to your mixture. But I usually just sprinkle a little bit of salt and pepper right on the eggs themselves or the tofu themselves right before I stick it in the oven. So let's get prepared for the oven and I'll be right back. So I have my baking tray in front of me. I really love the tray that comes with like my air fryer or my toaster oven. It's like the perfect size. It's not too big like a jelly roll sheet or something like that. So I typically love to do those, and that's what I'm doing today. I also have cut a piece of parchment that just outlines the top of my tray. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and add my tofu. And you don't want to disturb the tofu too much. You really want it to have that texture and the look of like scrambled eggs. So I'm just gonna place it right on the parchment. I used to cook this recipe on top of the stove, but then I needed to use oil in order to basically like fry it or, for the scramble. I will use, and I do use oils, but I try to limit it as much as I can and find other ways of cooking, whether it's by using water on the stove top or maybe doing what I'm doing here, which is to place it in the oven and to bake it. So once we get all of this onto the tray, we're gonna place it in the oven, and the temperature can be 350. I have cooked it before a little higher, but I typically stick with a 350. It takes about 20 minutes for it to cook. About midway, so at the 10-minute mark, I will usually just give it a stir so that way it does not brown or dry out too much on the top surface. But there we go. So we're just gonna place this in the oven, and then when it is ready, I will pull it out and share what it looks like with you. The tofu is now ready to enjoy. I hope you find that this is a staple for your household and that something so super and easy can be done right in your own kitchen. 2 side notes before I do say goodbye. You definitely would like to stick with using parchment. It eliminates the use for oils and also helps protect your cooking dish. The turmeric can stain, so that's just a key to keep in mind. And then as far as storing your additional egg seasoning for future use, you do want to place it in an airtight container. So if you don't have a jar like this, definitely a glass dish with the locking lid. And then of course, don't forget to label it. So that way when you're reaching in your spice cabinet or looking on your spice rack and you're wondering, what is that? I hope that helps. I look forward to sharing again soon. Take care.